All right, we are live. Yeah, it's like that actually would be a great prank to play on live streamers if you just like go into a pose and try to freak them out. All right, so what's happening, everybody? James Hancock and Bill Scurry here. We're gonna just chill for a couple of minutes as people file in and just let people kind of get caught up. But maybe as we just kind of see who's going to show up. Mr. Scurry, let's start with who you are, your podcast, your YouTube channel, etc. And then once everybody's here, then we can dive into the main event.
Well, I am a native-born Dutchman, James, and I currently live in Amsterdam. Ik hou van de centrum van Amsterdam. I'm studying language. I'm trying my hardest here. Yeah, so I'm a guy.
You're like, oh yeah, I didn't. You never thought about how you had to like pay your phone bill in Dutch. Like it's one thing to like know how to order a beer, but when something like you're paying your taxes, like, ooh, I need like a certain level to be able to hang in there.
It was the son of a bitch. That's part of. I didn't realize until I was starting to get mail, like my fucking Verizon bill. I'm like, oh my god, or not Verizon, whatever, Vodafone, iPhone, whatever. Like I gotta know fucking Dutch for this. I have to pay the water tax, but. Anyway, yes, I'm an expat. My name is Bill Scurry. I'm living in Amsterdam now. I'm a longtime New Yorker, part of the Wrong Reel community. I cut videos. I do podcasting. I podcast about film. I podcast about pop culture. I write about film. I have a video series that I'm in the heat of the second season, an essay series called American Caesar Salad, 3 deep in a adventure series of 10. And I am thrilled beyond belief that you brought this topic to me because I love these guys. Carpenter Brut, this is my jam. Let's talk about Blood Machines. Let's talk about Carpenter Brut.
Very cool.
Let's evangelize the message a little bit without being shills, but this is an honest love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always lean toward things where I can just shower praise on things, but without having to like, cook up any BS. But all it takes is one bit of exposure to one of the videos. And if you're not a fan for life, then I don't know what's wrong with you. But I want to say quickly, just say hello to some people in the chat who I recognize. I see Bob O'Mara. I'm assuming that's Robert O'Mara, my frequent co-host on Wrong Reel from Ireland. I'm seeing the great Martin Kessler from Flixwise, who's been on Wrong Reel many times. I'm seeing W. Mass Liberty, who is always doing our great pre-code Hollywood episodes over on Wrong Reel. So yeah, tons of familiar faces. The boys in the lab, God damn it, I know who that is. I think that's Tom Horan, who did like my Halloween episode and things like that. But I remember after the last live stream, I was like, oh, I didn't realize who you were, and etc. So I think that's Tom Horan. If not, I apologize for
we got my man in Belgium, Leonard Robert, who had it met jou. I'm doing it. I'm going there.
I love it. I think we saw Matthias van der Roos in here earlier. Oh, we got Victor Rodriguez. And Victor Rodriguez is actually going to be a guest on a live stream coming up in the very near future, all about his favorite adaptations of the Odyssey. And for people who are into the world of gaming, Rodriguez has also got an interesting perspective because he worked on the game God of War, which is combined with Greek mythology. So yeah, that should be a ton of fun. But it seems like we got a decent enough kind of base now to work. Oh, and Sky Movies, good old Sky Wingfield. Hell yeah. So
we got the room. Is Moose still there or did he back out? I can't tell.
I think he had to go back to work. In any event, we've got a nice international crowd here, which is fitting because this is a nice international topic. So I'm assuming some people here are diehard fans. Some people here are curious about Blood Machines, but have not seen it. And some people are just a blank slate. So initially, like the first 5 or 10 minutes, we'll go spoiler free about Blood Machines, but there's some images, there's some imagery in here that's so eye popping and so jaw dropping. I'm not going to go through a live stream without tipping my hat to some of the genius of what, like just the climax alone. It just, I'm still processing it, but I was just thunderstruck. But eases into it. Who is Carpenter Brut? Who's Seth Ickerman? What is Blood Machines? Lay it on us.
Well, I got there from the music. Like I heard rumblings on the internet of a band called Carpenter Brut, which is a pun on a champagne, Charpentier Brut. And Brut, as we know in French, is dry. Is it dry or sec? I forget. I'm an idiot.
One of the two. Me out of French after 3rd grade. He said I was too dumb, and they made me take another language. So
I knew of the band before I knew about the champagne, but it was Charpentier Brut, and the band was this one guy named Frank Husso or Franck, maybe Franck. Either way, it's a one-man band. The guy is this perfectionist digital.
Tony Kelly just confirmed it means dry.
Dry. Thank you, Tony. Perfect. So Yeah, this guy is like a freak. He's like a perfectionist. He's like those two dudes from Daft Punk, the two Belgians, who just like create this machine honed. I mean, the music is awesome. I'm not saying anybody who works with digital samples and studio stuff, I think is incredible. There's something about that over analog instruments. Like I'm all on board with the synth thing. So this guy Franck Husso is very much like that, where he's a one-man band, came up with these songs, but then shrouded himself in a little bit of anonymity in terms of what he did. Wasn't trying to stand in front of the music, just wanted it to speak for itself. But he called it Carpenter Brut for a reason. It's because he was really hearkening back to early 80s type stuff. Now, if you squint your ears, you will hear sort of Carpenter soundtracks in there. But I think that the sound is much closer to like Iron Maiden fused with like Goblin. You know, there is something very cinematic about the whole thing. And I mean, maybe Carpenter himself was Iron Maiden fused with Goblin. I don't know, it's hard to tell. Chicken and egg, whatever. But yeah, incredible mixture of guitars, drum machines, pounding synths, that sort of thing. So he's got, I think, 4 albums out now. It was an album called Trilogy, which was released in 1, 2, and 3 on Bandcamp and a couple of other services. And then an album called Leather Teeth came out. There's also a live album in there too.
Leather Teeth is the shit. I've watched a lot of those music videos on repeat.
Fucking dope as a motherfuck. Yeah, exactly. And so he'd been fucking around with a few video artists for a while, but he made the acquaintance of these other Frenchmen, these guys who go by the name of Seth Ickerman, which I mean, James, is that like, if you say that like Seth Ickerman, is that some joke? I can't even tell if that's
if it is a joke, it is eluding my fragile understanding of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's a nom de guerre of Seth Ickerman, and let me see, I have that written down who these guys are. They're 2 Frenchmen as well. I mean, everybody here is French. So Seth Ickerman are 2 dudes named Raphael Hernandez and Savitri Jolie Gonfar. That's it. So, but they're almost like they came out of advertising. That was their deal. So they have this incredible command of visual image and product placement and branding, I'm sure is what their thing was.
Speaking of branding, it's emblazoned on your left boob as we speak.
My right tit. Yeah, here it is. Exactly. I got the swag. For once, I got the band t-shirt. And so these guys hooked up with Husso and they said, we want to make a video. And he's like, fine, I'm not going to give you any oversight. You guys do what you want, but there's a couple of like, I'm a stickler for a few details. He wanted, I think, the gas mask clad driver and some imagery and stuff like that. He says, go to town, do whatever you want for the rest of it. Whatever the song Turbo Killer inspires you to make, do something with it. And they came up with this fucking amazing video.
Yeah, that was my gateway drug. I saw it a couple of years ago. I had no idea who Carpenter Brut or Seth Ickerman were, and I was spellbound. And then I would like rediscover it almost by accident. And then as this Kickstarter, I kind of missed the Kickstarter campaign for the sequel to Turbo Killer, which is Blood Machines, but I just kept coming back around to it. And it got to the point where if I had like siblings over or friends over, I would just pop it in while people are eating or drinking or whatever, but you just can't take your eyes off of it. And I love, it's like this, just the colors, the aesthetic, the storytelling, but I like how it's storytelling, but it's non-linear storytelling. Just, I loved everything about it. And I mean, we grew up in the 80s. We grew up in the era of music videos. I can't think of any music videos from back then that are as good as Turbo Killer. Turbo Killer is next level.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you go back to like Landis making Thriller from Michael Jackson, in terms of the same, like people putting that kind of attention to craft I mean, making
it a short film.
Right. I mean, even Scorsese doing Bad. I mean, Michael Jackson had the corner on that for a little while. Yeah, you know, there's something else about Turbo Killer, which is, first of all, they use that mid-witch, which to me, I mean, well, that harkens back to Lovecraft, right? I mean, isn't that the idea of there being a New England town filled with cemeteries is a little bit of that Lovecraft thing, but also they put this gauzy filter on top of it. It's the film grain, which I know is
and like cigarette burns and like scratches, but yeah, it gives it a little texture.
Yeah, that little burned in frame, a real change. Oh yeah, it gives it texture, and so you got the grain of that. You got, is that like there's one aesthetic which is people adding the VHS artifacting. I get that. I mean, that's great. I love that one.
Yeah, like in Kung Fury. And that guy was one of the producers on Blood Machines. But he loves that VHS aesthetic where it's almost like you're having to do the tracking to like find the image again.
I mean, that's great. I mean, and these guys wrote their own algorithms for that kind of overlay where you drop that on top of the video when you're done, and it puts that great layer on top of it. But these guys did the same thing with film, at least for Turbo Killer. And that to me makes me think Hammer. I mean, not just because they have misty, miasma-covered cemeteries and weird shit like that. But the mixture of the pastel colors, the bright blood reds, the lights makes me think of Hammer. And I mean, that's not an accident. You know, they know they're bringing in Hammer for this. I would say Hammer is less an influence for Blood Machines. That looks more like a Boris Vallejo painting or Frazetta or something like that.
Yeah, no, look, when I see Blood Machines, I think late 70s, early 80s, heavy metal hurlant, that whole world, where it's just it's violence and intoxicating imagery and nudity, and it doesn't necessarily have to make narrative sense, but it's just an overwhelming sensory experience.
And something incredibly figured out, but also non-American. I mean, I don't know what that means because we're also steeped in so many influences. But I mean, as somebody who probably went really American up to the point where I got out of Long Island and started eating all these other influences, seeing like what that Lace Humanoids thing was, you know, Mobius, not just in the Silver Surfer graphic novel that I read back in 1990.
Or like The Ankle and things like that.
Yeah. Right. And Blueberry and all that shit. But seeing like, oh, you build on top of like Jodorowsky and the Inkall, exactly. That's where this stuff comes from. I mean, it's perfect. That's Franco-Belgian, Netherlands type cartooning influences. It's a completely separate set of influences. I'll tell you one thing very quickly about buying comic books in the Netherlands. I go to the book stand here, at least I did before the plague times, and that they'd have very few English language comics. And I was like, okay, give me some of that French shit. Give me some of that Belgian shit that I have no idea what it is. And it's in French and it's in Belgian. Belgian being French and Flemish. It's like, I have no idea. I can't even read this shit if I want to. So I'm boxed out of those influences. But I mean, it's all there. These guys obviously read a shitload of comic books, watched a shitload of cartoons, and watched a shitload of movies, all the right ones, the ones that we all love together. And I think, you know, for Seth Ickerman, these two dudes,
it's like a pastiche of all those different influences kind of swirled together. But real quick, I wanted to interrupt you just because there are a few familiar faces I wanted to say hello to, but John Arminio, Fred Schaefer, Neil Gaskin. So a lot of friendly faces from the Twitterverse. So, and also cool. I should have said this at the outset. Anytime somebody wants to dive in with questions, comments, whatever, by all means do so. Oh, and Victor's talking about the Meta Barons. Yeah, I was actually just going through the Meta Barons. Actually, I can't look at it right now because my computer is resting on a stack of Jodorowsky graphic novels, one of which is Meta Barons. So I can't whip it out in any event. So yeah, but keep the questions and everything coming because this is like a cocktail party for film freaks. So nobody should feel the need to be shy.
But James, talk to me about Carpenter Brut. Talk to me about the videos. What did you see when you started digging into this stuff?
Well, I'm always desperate to find cool shows and movies to review on this channel. And then it was kind of on again and off again my radar, Blood Machines. But because I'd missed the Kickstarter campaign, periodically I would just send like little requests by email saying I would love to do a press screener or do a press review, blah, blah, blah. And then out of the blue, the Blood Machine Twitter profile followed my my Geeking with James Hancock Twitter account. I was like, this is my moment. So I just DM'd them. I was like, I'm dying to review your movie. And so they hooked me up with Shudder. They sent me a press screener like a week ago. And as soon as I got that press screener, I was like, all right, well, maybe I should do a little bit more homework beyond Turbo Killer. And one night I just got completely blazed and started going through the Vimeo page for Silver
Strain, yeah.
And the Vimeo page has these videos that are less censored than those on YouTube. And I just completely, totally fell into it. I was lying on my couch, like convulsing with my legs thrashing in all directions. Like I'm not a dancer, but you cannot help yourself. If you're watching these videos, you just start wiggling like a worm on a hook. And I was just losing my mind. I was like, this is the coolest shit ever because the music is just pulse pounding, but they're bringing in all these clips from slasher films and erotic films or Japanese cinema, whatever the case might be. And I finally realized these guys are completely speaking my language in terms of their influences, their loves, but they're also making it feel modern and fresh and exciting. And so I guess now's as good a time as any to talk about our first impressions of Blood Machines. But I already posted a review a couple days ago, but this is your chance. This is the first ever on the channel where we're doing a live stream review of a movie the day it comes out. I guess, where did you see it? How did you see it? And what are your first thoughts?
Well, I'm a backer. Not that means anything. I back a lot of shit. I backed In Search of Tomorrow, so it's like I'm all over the thing in terms of nerd media. But once Carpenter Brut was like shaking the hat around via Seth Ickerman saying this is the thing that's coming out, I'm like, all right, you got 50 of my US dollars, my Yankee dollars going your way for this. So I collected a reward, I would say about 24 hours ago, they published the link to us. So, I mean, based on your review, like I knew it was coming, and then my enthusiasm about your review put me in touch with you, and yeah. So, having seen the movie, it's like it was a dope 50 minutes. I mean, it totally lived up to my expectations, and there's something, the experience of watching a movie where it is so rich with tropes, and it is so rich with imagery, and it's referential, but it's not mimetic of nostalgia. This is the important thing, because we're watching, there's so much garbage. There's a liberal supply of garbage, a fire hose of shit from the 80s being thrown at us, but there's so little of it that's being used as an influence, like an amino acid of a new form of nutrition. And I think that Panos Cosmatos did this with Mandy. No fucking shit. So I mean, we all went crazy for that for a good reason. And I think this sits right next to it, where you chop up the little pieces, you recombine them, you understand what was so great about those original pieces of art we loved, but you don't just represent them like Stranger Things. No offense to Stranger Things, but I fucking jumped off a while ago.
I don't mind a little offense toward Stranger Things, because I thought the first season was a ton of fun, and we've had diminishing returns ever since. And it's like, yes, at a certain point, y'all have to introduce something of your own. You can't just wallow in silly haircuts and people doing lightsaber sounds.
Yeah, those two brothers. What were the guys who did Stranger Things? Those two brothers who
Duffer Brothers.
Yeah, the Duffers. It's like the difference between a creative instinct like the Duffer Brothers, who gave you a lot of entertainment just based on, I mean, pastiche in a mimesis in a weird way. But then the synthetic thing of using the bits and pieces, it's almost like Carpenter Brut is sampling. They're chopping up the bits and pieces and using the some of the imagery as a tone, as chords, almost like making music out of it. But then they're giving you something wholly new. Because
it's like when Charlie Parker was doing a saxophone solo one time, and he suddenly switches into the Firebird suite, and like Miles Davis was like, "What the fuck? He's playing classical music," and then he went right back into whatever they were playing. So he's not wallowing in his nostalgia for the Firebird suite, but he's just like, all right, I love this shit. I'm putting it in there, and now we're moving on.
Yeah, Ray Manzarek did that with Light My Fire. He went into like Mozart. Yeah, exactly. It's like people have this influence where they know how to read music, and these guys know how to read film. I wouldn't say that the story is the most has primacy of this. There is a coherent plot. There is something that goes through it.
Yeah, there's a loose summary, or there's a structure, but I wouldn't say this is necessarily like Philip K. Dick level science fiction. You're here for the imagery and the sounds and the emotions and the feelings. If you want like a really dense sci-fi text, Blood Machines is not going to provide that. And if you're looking for Royal Shakespeare Company level of acting, it's not going to provide that either. But it doesn't matter, because when it kicks in, and it kicks in repeatedly throughout the 3 episodes on Shudder, there's nothing like it.
It's hair standing up on edge. There's just so many moments, and they're paced throughout evenly, where they give you these tingle moments where your spine just gets an electric chill at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end of like shit you might not have seen before. Or stuff that I can't recall seeing, and just like, man, it's like they really do this job of uncorking imagery that our cynical eyes have not yet seen. It's like, how could you possibly discover something new? And some of it made me think of Star Trek, the motion picture. Some of it made me think of Guardians of the Galaxy. Some of it made me think of 2001. But it didn't make me think of like, oh, I've seen this already. No, it made me think of it like, this is why we stand on the shoulders of giants, is to create something great, to reach higher than the thing beforehand. And I think that they know the continuum that they're living in, visually and storytelling. And they know that we can read their influences, so they can't fucking fake it. Also, their fan base is so tight, small, and culty that they can't like push some shit past us and just say we're going to accept some Fulci all over.
And I like
again.
how they made zero commercial concessions to try and make it feel more like, you know, like a big giant global entertainment mega franchise right now. This is a movie that they financed through Kickstarter. They could tell it their own way, with their own style, their own voice. And there's so few storytellers right now that are carving their own path. And I just love the fact that I was in the hands of somebody who was making something that was wholly original. It might be inspired by things of the past, but I've never seen anything quite like it. And also, in the world of global entertainment right now, sex is strictly verboten. They might dive into some other topics, but it's just it's so sanitized and so family friendly. And to see a movie where it's like the most outrageous, like supermodel level, like like fashion show, like writhing nude sci-fi bodies with upside down neon glowing crosses and everything. I couldn't believe just how intoxicating the imagery was, and I just kept thinking like this. I feel like I'm taking like digital drugs while watching it in the best possible way, and just every once in a while, I just kept like kind of exclaiming and like, "Oh my god!" Like just having so much fun because so many sci-fi movies these days just feel flat and risk averse, or they're made for 8-year-olds. And I'm a 43-year-old degenerate. Like I need strong medicine. I like strong drink. I want something that's gonna kick me in the balls when I watch it. And Blood Machines, all three of those, it absolutely delivered.
It's not even the sexiest thing that they've been a party of, or party to rather. Yes, there's something about seeing the most pert French breasts of all time. I hate to be creepy about this, but it's they use it for a reason, that they have these wonderfully lithe nude French actresses on camera, and they
like in my review I said it's like going to like a weird experimental ballet where everybody's naked, where it's like these perfect bodies, but it's in an artful way.
That's it. I mean, you could paint with the human body with the nude female form. I mean, for Christ's sake, I mean, aren't all of Bernini's sculptures nude? Aren't Caravaggio's topless? I mean, this is what
Greek sculptures going back 2,000 years. Of course, the Vatican in their infinite wisdom 1,500 years later added fig leaves, everybody, but 2,000 years ago the Greeks, like, let's just do the perfect form.
It is, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that they're French and that they are less, I mean, they're younger than we are. I'm going to assume they're
but they don't have the hangups that we suffer from.
Right. And these guys are younger. These guys are coming up in the post-Gaspar Noé environment. I mean, I'm sure that as Frenchmen, they've already been exposed to the French extreme, all that shit.
They probably watched that shit for breakfast before going to school.
They brush their teeth with that fucking shit. Exactly.
Throw in martyrs. But quick interruption. There's a question. Someone says, Tony Fezula, if I'm saying that correctly, says, what chance do you think these guys could have to do some higher budget productions? Tony, the idealistic side of me would like to believe that people who are making big budget movies right now, or at least the people in charge, will take note and they'll try to do like a talent grab and they'll try to throw some offers their way. What I hope doesn't happen is that they get kind of consumed by and then thrown into the wood chipper of the Hollywood studio system and then never to return, which has obviously happened a million times over. But if they were to find maybe like a mid-range film, like a $20 to $30 million film, where they could still go for that hard R rating, where they're not worried about putting hundreds of millions of dollars on the line. I hate that when somebody makes a small budget movie that does well and they immediately get thrown into the lion's den with a $300 million project and they just get devoured by the process. So I would love to see them raise their game. However, I feel like when people see Blood Machines, my assumption is going to be that they are so satisfied that if they ran a crowdfunding campaign tomorrow for another movie, they might raise like 5-10 million. Like there are some Kickstarter campaigns that have raised grotesque sums of money, especially video games. So maybe they try to, say no to Hollywood as long as humanly possible. Obviously, I would love to see their sensibility have just like a giant cash injection, but at the same time, I don't want to see their vision compromised. At the same time, there is a hunger for Franco-Belgian Dutch guys who can cross over. The dudes who did Bad Boys 3, they were this pair of Belgian directors. Like this area, the sort of Benelux countries and France, and to some degree, I guess Spain, even and beyond that, Ireland, etc. There's some parts of Europe that are thought of as a feeder system, where these guys come up in the trenches with their, they get their deep influences, and they do work that is locally commercial, also artistically viable. I mean, I see that there's a shitload of directors here in the Netherlands who are ready to play the game. They're incredible. No reason to see why they can't accelerate. And I mean, these guys just happen to be visually centered. Their whole thing, their métier is effects, green screens. And I mean, they do, Seth Ickerman does the graphics themselves. They don't run the camera, but they will do a lot of the previs and they'll do the rendering themselves in addition to a bunch of other houses. I can see them making the jump a lot easier. The problem is, it's like, what will they be invited to do? Well, I would rather see
Fantastic
them do like
Five,
like a 10-episode Netflix series of like the strangest, darkest, most like groundbreaking sci-fi imaginable. Like try to do for Netflix what like Blade Runner did for movies, or what 2001 did for movies, or what Metropolis did for movies. Because I feel like they've got the talent and the vision and the aesthetic and the style to deliver something that could totally change the game. And I feel like there's a giant hunger for sci-fi that doesn't feel like something you take the whole family to.
Yeah.
So I would assume, and also Netflix has a wonderful track record of just being all over the place and kind of game for anything. Like they don't have like a core mission statement or anything like that. They dabble in so many different types of entertainment that I feel like that would be the perfect home for them.
Well, I mean, if you're going to go by the example of those German bastards who directed Dark, you know, like, right. But to a certain degree, you almost don't have to get out of that box. You can just have a gigantic crash success in the middle of the continent with this, you know, buzzy project that holds true to your influences. And then you just make another thing for Germany. Netflix can put that up and you don't ever have to crack into Hollywood because, I mean, if you think about it, that is very exclusive and limiting.
Like Babylon Berlin, which is a huge show in Germany, which is definitely crossed over where they're making zero concessions to make it accessible to American audiences, but there are a lot of Americans who are discovering it and loving it.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, like what was the Bloodshot movie and the Deadpool 2, and I think that what you're seeing is in Hollywood. This is a side note, and Hollywood is looking at video game cutscene directors and directors of stunt and action. The guy who did Extraction, you know, was Chris Evans.
Yeah, Captain America's stunt double. Yeah.
So they're pulling in guys to do big budget from strange sources, but they're still the same kind of industry guys that are coming in through visual thing. But they can look to Los Angeles and Toronto and these guys who do visual effects first before you get to deal with two recalcitrant Frenchmen who were going to sort of say we're not going to compromise on our image. So it is a good question. I could easily see them jumping into John Wick 10 or something like that. But would that be the best use of their talent? I probably would say no.
And also, there's such a dearth of bold original content now. I love the fact that this is not based on a comics, not based on a book, not based on a video game. They're creating something new. And original IP is such a rare, precious commodity right now. That's what's so fucking fun about this. We don't have to argue about whether or not they're getting Luke Skywalker right because they're creating their own original creation. And that's one of the things that made the 80s so fun as a kid is that you did have so much stuff that was new. You didn't have to argue about the interpretation of RoboCop because it was just fucking RoboCop. It was the first one. And I feel like the world of sci-fi and movies has been craving something exciting like this for a while. So we're almost at the halfway point. So before we get into spoilers, just like your 25 words or less kind of letterboxed review, if you were to try to sum up your feelings about Blood Machines for people who have not seen it yet and you're trying to make the case, just give us your point of view.
Heavily based on influence, wonderful visuals, amazing visuals, stunning vistas, the spirit of indie filmmaking, low budget filmmaking, what they could not do with practicals on set, they were able to expand in terms of green screen and post-production, but within a responsible degree, never losing sight of the story that they wanted to tell. And I feel like if their influences were looking at this movie, John Carpenter, these guys who they're obviously paying a lot of homage to, I think they'd be flattered and they would say, you have fulfilled our mission statement. If it was Boris Vallejo, if it was John Carpenter, if it was Philippe Droulet, you know, I think that's someone who, Tony put that out there, Philippe Droulet. That's exactly who these guys are trying to make you think of. And I think that they would be flattered to see it. A success all around. I mean, it's just a great 50-minute feature. Everything that they set out to do, there's no way they can't be proud. And also, as a fan, as the freaks who've been waiting for this shit, I just feel like, thank you, God, for fucking dropping this in the middle of a quarantine. This is exactly what I've been looking for.
At a time when we have no new movies to enjoy, or very few, and a lot of video on demand movies, to have this otherworldly, transportive, just euphoric sci-fi experience where, once again, like I said before, like I think maybe when it comes to the screenplay, they perhaps could have, I don't know, like, I'm not even going to criticize the script. It's not what I'm there for. What I'm there for is to see a cosmic entity that's the most lovely things you've ever laid eyes on, soaring through space at the speed of light with spaceships chasing it, all to the most pulse-pounding music you can imagine. And I think Carpenter Brut's fans who just love the music. I mean, the soundtrack's been available on YouTube for a while, and I will admit that I have experimented with the physical act of love combined with that soundtrack, and it works really, really well. So I give it my strongest possible recommendations. So yeah, home run. I can't wait to watch it, and I know there are certain scenes that I'm going to watch again and again and again, and that for me is the measure of a movie that's really kind of made an impact on me, when I can't let go of particular sequences and just find myself craving it like your favorite restaurant, like in the neighborhood or whatever. And I know the scene where she's flying at the opening of episode 2, And the scene at the end where we're seeing, well, I don't want to get into spoilers for 27 more seconds, but the ending of the third episode also, I will be watching on repeat for quite some time. But let's do a quick glance at what people have been saying just to see if there are anything people want to mention. So Adam Seba, if I'm saying that correctly, says video games are becoming more and more like movies. Certainly with trailers and cutscenes, and I find oftentimes some of the trailers are better than a lot of movies. Like the trailer for Elden Ring, the next game from Software, and Martin Kessler, he's a fellow fan of all these games like Bloodborne and the Dark Souls games. But if you watch the trailer for Elden Ring, it's wildly more intoxicating than any trailer for any movie I've seen all year. So yeah, but I'm all in on both video games as well as movies borrowing from each other. And now it sounds like Cyberpunk 2077 might be a game that has a similar aesthetic to Blood Machines that people are really excited about. So I'm definitely gonna be checking out Cyberpunk 2077. My
good friend Victor Rodriguez says the repetition of repeating images from French classical art education is detectable in Blood Machines, which I think is absolutely correct, because these guys went to school. These guys had an education. They just weren't fucking brought up for standardized testing. They know of what they speak.
And also, they're not just watching Star Wars. Like, I love Star Wars. I've seen Star Wars 150,000 times, but there's more to sci-fi than Star Wars.
They read Arthur Rimbaud. That's exactly.
But like crack open Dune, open up a magazine of heavy metal. Like I feel like obscure, or watch On the Silver Globe by Andrzej Zulawski. Like there's sci-fi can be so weird and so strange and have so much variety. And that's another reason why I'm celebrating Blood Machines. It takes us into new terrain. So let's get into our spoiler section. Highlights, favorite moments, favorite bits, because there's not a lot of material to work with. As I mentioned in my review, there's a lot like lengthy opening and closing credits. You're like, well, like how much actual like movie am I getting to watch? But the opening credit sequence in episode 2 in particular, I remember it finally says directed by Seth Ickerman. I was like, we're 13 minutes into this episode. I was like, it's halfway over and they're just finishing the credits. But that was one of the coolest parts, because that's where you have the entity flying through space. So I was like, yeah, best opening credit sequence imaginable.
I mean, the big dangling balls, the scrotal stack that it takes to do something like that, to have all that, that's all prelude to your fucking credit sequence. But yeah, again, seeing people fly through space, seeing a big the ship is shaped literally like a horseshoe. And I mean, we're all thinking of the derelict craft from Alien, not unintentionally. It's supposed to be there. It lands on this rocky planet that's just filled with moisture. It looks like LV-426, or before they had a name for it in 79's Alien. I mean, the visuals of the ship itself are great. You know, like you reinvent a craft not to look orthogonal, planes like a fucking space shuttle. This thing it's got these weird caliper-like claws on the inside, and almost like a running track around where a system of jets and or guns could reposition themselves around. But yes, I think that the most stunning image from it comes from this entity, this spirit. I guess it's the ghost of a ship. I never
it's like the soul of a ship that gets shot down and crashes, and seeing that soul escape, where it's like this writhing humanoid shape on the surface. And I love how this redheaded girl straddles one area, and the girl is under her, and she kind of like gives her like a quick rub down, and then finally she like rips through the hull of the ship before just soaring off into the sky. And that's another great image where she's floating up as the commander ship, that giant glowing green monstrosity rolls in, and everybody's just like, oh my God, like, are you seeing what I was seeing? This beautiful like a girl just flew into the sky. And yeah, I think the first episode is the weakest of the 3, but it ends in such stunning fashion that you can't help yourself. You immediately want to dive right into part 2.
Yeah, right. I mean, but the clarity, doing this shit back in the old days of optical effects, and I'm an optical evangelist. I mean, I think we all are. The fact that the fusion of practical and optical compositing made some of the greatest films we've ever known. And, CG is making great images, but we don't see the good ones that work as well as we notice the shitty ones, the bad ones that work terribly. That's the problem. So this is good CG. This is good green screen. This is the kind of shit that we wanted to see optically composited back in the day. But this beautiful, lithe, probably 5'3" French dancer who's completely nude except for probably eyeshadow and fake lashes.
And it's like metallic body paint.
Yeah, that's the other beautiful thing too, is her body has almost like these decals, which look a little bit like half spider webs, half circuitry. Hard to tell, and also a fair amount of slime to indicate something organic. And with this inverted cross, right, James? The motif that Carpenter Brut has is this upside down cross, which glows
on the
like
forehead, or basically from like the belly button through the taint. Like,
yeah, right. And there's some scenes that, like, when you're watching,
or the nacho, as my sister calls it. I'm like, what's the nacho? She goes,
yeah.
nacho ass, nacho dick. I was like, all right, it's the nacho.
When you're watching these women writhe around at the end, and I know that they did have to. The imaging was the idea that they had to cover up for decency the parts that would be truly obscene. They put a strip. I mean, it naturally fits in there. It's this sort of molten glowing strip that's part of that inverted
It's
cross.
the power within exploding forth. Can't be contained.
Is it? Oh boy, is it ever. But there's so many wonderful images. Again, the idea of like, well, we have space flight. Okay, great. Check. We got spaceships. Check. We've seen all that. We got laser guns. Check. We've seen all that shit. We've seen, hot, beautiful green space women that Captain Kirk was putting the moves on. We've seen all that stuff. But how do you reinvent it? How do you retweak it? It's like these Frenchmen, these French bastards find a way to redo it, where the idea that this gigantic ship shaped like a horseshoe is tracking this woman careening through space. And, like, you totally believe that these are objects in 3D reality, and then they go.
Like my suspension of disbelief was on overdrive. I bought it. Like, initially you're kind of watching, oh, okay, they kind of shot this in a garage, but they're doing a pretty good job. But once they go out into, space, all in. Like, when you get to that giant like graveyard of old ships and things like that, like I could not believe the design, the design schemes, the world building. I completely, totally bought in that this universe exists, and we're exploring it. And yeah, it just had so much mystery. I keep using the word intoxicating, so I don't have to find another word. But goddamn, it completely sucked me in. But real quick, I just wanted to read a few comments. But Andre Villafranca said the Metal Gear Solid franchise would work spectacularly as a TV series. If well adapted, we could be looking at something really special and groundbreaking. I must admit, the only Metal Gear game I ever played was on the original NES, way back in the day, and I even would call into the Nintendo Power hotline to ask questions, because I kept getting lost in this maze that I couldn't get through, and you would have to like wait on hold for like 2 days before you finally got through, and then they wouldn't like just answer your questions. They wanted you to figure it out, so they like tease you with like riddles. Anyway, I love the first Metal Gear, but I'm embarrassed to admit I'm a total blank slate on Metal Gear.
I played Sons of Liberty. It was a pretty fucking great game. But also, Sons of Liberty takes place on Wall Street, where I lived in New York before I left, so there was a hometown connection to it.
So Paul Nolan asks, anywhere I can watch it besides Shudder, is it coming on VOD? Now, earlier I was on their homepage or not their homepage, the Blood Machine's Twitter profile. It seems like right now it's on Vimeo, VOD, and Shudder for like Ireland, UK, Canada, and America. And it gave like a vague, non-committal date as to when it will be available in the rest of the world. But because these filmmakers are French, I can't imagine that the release internationally will be far behind. But unfortunately, I can't say like right now. But I imagine once this thing catches on, it'll probably be available with some less reputable sites and that sort of thing. But because if they don't release it soon, people are just going to demand to watch it.
The Shudder people have been super friendly so far. And so, like as helpful as they've been, I'd hate to just like snub the Shudder connection. And it seems like a good marriage. I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing. And I mean, they had teased this in the Kickstarter announcements that they were going for a major North American streaming platform, and Shudder is absolutely that. So, I mean, if they had the foresight to go all in on this, I give them credit that they pinhooked this thing before anybody else did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on Shudder. I mean, Joe Bob Briggs, his show is so goddamn funny. When Victor Rodriguez did an episode about Lovecraft on Wrong Reel, and I watched some of his presentations on Castle Freak and Reanimator, and the way he breaks things up, and the guests he brings in, his interviewing style, but his deep reverence for filmmakers. Yeah. I find his whole style to be just a breath of fresh air. And yeah, so once again, Shudder, huge fan. They gave me access to this movie in advance, but otherwise I owe them nothing. I'm just a genuine fan of everything that they do.
So what were some visuals that stood out to you? I mean, as a guy who watches a ton of shit every minute of his waking hour, like what stood out?
All the souls of all the wreckage of the wrecked ships start to come to life. There's this great bit where the camera is like careening through the guts of this just derelict machine, and suddenly out of like the metalwork, just hundreds of gorgeous naked bodies with glowing crosses. Like, what? holy shit. And when they arrive, where you got like the master of ceremonies kind of like controlling them all, how they all kind of collapse on the ground, like almost like statues. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I've never seen that in a movie before.
That's
and I've
true.
seen a hell of a lot of weird erotic films and science fiction and that sort of thing. And to completely catch me off guard and surprise me and stimulate me that way, I once again, I was putty in their hands.
Yeah, I hate to be a dunce about this, but maybe I just assume that because they're French, that there's some permissiveness in their minds that they will go to something that bordered on interpretive dance, right? There was the thing where she's reaching her arms out, and it's half
And
of
like,
that.
yeah, flinging him around. It's like the metal is like being hurled at the commander's ship.
They looked a little bit like Elizabeth Berkley in Showgirls, where you're whatever that sort of gesturing thing is, where the women were obviously dancers. They did not do any lines, but their bodies were incredible. They looked like they were lithe, and they moved on cue. So like they fulfilled the promise of there being this sort of sci-fi thing, that they were half spirit, half debris, half entity. And some sort of impulsive force, some sort of weapon that was built to destroy another spacecraft. That's hard to explain unless you see it. You guys should watch this. So you know
also, it's one of
about.
things where, because the story is ambiguous, or because some might say incomplete when it comes to the screenplay, or because they choose to leave some things open, this is one of those rare sci-fi flicks that's going to invite open like a variety of interpretations, which guess what? That's what art's been doing for millennia. Like, you're supposed to be able to come at it with your own experiences and appreciate it for what it is and have your own point of view. But I like a little mystery. I like a little ambiguity. I like a little art in my sci-fi. It doesn't all have to be escapist entertainment for children.
Yeah, I think that if you're going by the collaboration of Carpenter Brut, Frank Husso, and the two Seth Ickerman guys, what begins with Turbo Killer, which is an incredible promise and delivery of a promise, like that is so open to interpretation, but there's still so many concrete images, shit you've never seen before. Again, the mixture of the practical people on set, and then the idea that you wireframe something around them, you put them inside of an environment, they have a full vision. And, it's not dependent on money, these two guys, it's dependent on the fact that do they have enough resources around them? Maybe that is money to close on what they're thinking of. And I would say that between these two collaborations with Carpenter Brut, and I'll be honest, that's what I've seen from Seth Ickerman so far, has been Carpenter Brut. I think they each bring the best work out of each other. But I would say, look, Turbo Killer costs nothing. Go to Vimeo right now, watch Turbo Killer, just soak it in, watch it a second time. There's something really bold about what's going on there. I mean, Get in on Blood Machines, because it is a 50-minute version of that, all those influences. But that is a sampler of what if you dig what they do, you will totally get into the rest of it. And I think, here's the thing, I'm wearing the shirt, but...
Quick hypothetical, imagine if that temperament or that style was turned loose on the cosmic side of either the DC or Marvel universe. Obviously, DC and Marvel both have a lot of cosmic entities that, like to kind of look down on things from on high. In Marvel, you have like the Living Tribunal or Eternity, but as this giant Eternity level entity emerges at the end, like the hottest glowing purple naked chick you've ever seen, who's like the size of a planet. I was just thinking, like, can you imagine if like Marvel had the balls to like let these guys actually get turned loose on? One of my favorite bits from the original Infinity Gauntlet series is when all the cosmic entities team up to fight Thanos, and he mops the floor with them. But it's a great scene, and but that neither Disney nor Warner Brothers would ever in a million years have the creative courage or the testicular fortitude to allow these guys to touch some of their beloved properties.
And I thought that the hiring of Sam Raimi was a corrective to what I thought of as the pretty unimaginative hiring of Scott Derrickson to do Doctor Strange. Imagine if these guys were perfectly set to do a Ditko thing. Like, they're already hitting Ditko and Kirby on that strong suit. Like, imagine if these guys have been given, it's like they said, it doesn't matter what the story, we'll pencil in the story later. We'll have some guy calling out lines on set. You guys shoot this thing in Toronto or Georgia or wherever the fuck they shoot it. Come up with the visuals. Give us something we've never seen before, because Scott Derrickson did not do that. Also, Marvel Central, whoever was it animates these Dormammu scenes, some of the stuff was pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, but it's like nothing on the par.
But nothing that sears its way into your memory. All right. So quick comment from Victor Rodriguez. I love when the nude woman is flying through space and the drums kick in at the top of episode 2, reminding me of the Space Corvette from Heavy Metal movie. Yeah, I think this is the first movie since 1981 that has delivered upon the promise or the potential that we were exposed to in Heavy Metal. I've seen Heavy Metal, I have no idea how many times, and some of those segments more times than others. And obviously that's, on the whole, more comedic in tone. But that final section with Tarna, the last Tarakian, that's a little bit more serious in tone. And I feel like those images of like the giant statue with the sword and the lightning as she's putting on her uniform, those moments feel like precursors or kind of just like the ancestors of what we're seeing on display here. And it's always blown my mind that a movie that's such a just divine cult classic has been so elusive in terms of imitators. Usually any success will spawn imitators, but Heavy Metal spawned very few. This is the first one I can think of in 30 years that actually has managed to stick the landing if you like that style of storytelling.
Yeah, the only guy I can think of, and this is look, it's a cop out by me, but Besson is a guy, just because he's French, comes to mind, who's attempted to do big things. And yes, Besson has ripped off a lot of humanoid stuff, but he still has this idea that I'm going for a large palette. He's going for space. He's going for cosmic, whether it's that Valerian movie.
But he's not going for like that Jupiter ascending nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, Jupiter ascending. Yes, the Wachowskis lose a little something along the way. Besson, again, I don't want to just make a direct through line just simply because he's French, but there is some license he takes because he is French to do the humanoids thing. I think it's just more bred into the culture where he comes up with this as his influence. Like Jodorowsky was not writing for Marvel Comics. He was writing for humanoids when you were growing up. It's like, that's just, I'm not saying Stan Lee and Tom DeFalco and the rest of these guys from Marvel aren't great. They are complete influences. It's a different influence.
Yeah, but once you've been exposed to like Jodorowsky and Milo Manara's like the Borgias, you're like, whoa, comics can be so much more. It can be about political corruption and incest and plagues and madness and empires. And I mean, when I read the Borgias, I just couldn't believe. I mean, it's like, I've been reading I've been reading garbage for so long. Comics have the potential to be far more than what a lot of people really demand of it. So another question from Andre Villafranca says, what would you like for Tarantino's last film to be about? He's my favorite director, and I'm going to be very sad to see him retire. Hopefully he'll start writing his own TV series. I'm right there with you. I would like it if he actually never makes his 10th movie and just kind of leaves it dangling out. There's a possibility, but instead does a Western show or does a Kung Fu show or does anything he likes where it can actually just be more about like the art of writing, et cetera, and so forth. But I feel like he seems very satisfied with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he feels like if it's enough of a success, maybe that's a good one to go. I think he's been waiting for a good one to go out on. Is that the best movie he could go out on? I don't know, but it'll do. And if he wants to do 2 or 3 TV shows that carries him into his 60s, fantastic. I would be all in.
I have this hunch that he's not going to do the TV thing. I think that of all the men alive, he's still the snobbish one about TV, no matter how much he probably watches and exalts.
Yeah, all these episodes of Gunsmoke and the Rifleman and the Westerner and things like that. But I would or if he just did like a 30-hour TV show where he just talked about his favorite movies, like his favorite genre classics from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He probably knows more about low-budget genre films from those 3 decades than anyone else alive. Just give like the same way Scorsese did a personal journey through American filmmaking, where he talked about all of his favorite old-school movies from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Tarantino just gives us the official, monumental, comprehensive guide to all the movies that you've never seen. And I think that would be it would keep him busy for a decade. It would be incredible.
And on the other hand, I could also easily see him, because I know he thinks in 120
Tony
minutes.
says no QT Westerns, please. Yeah, Tony loves Westerns, but he is not fond of the Tarantino Westerns, which is totally. I might disagree, but I won't. It's not for me. It's not fighting words, because I can see I can see where the grievances lay.
Yeah, I don't mind the Western so much. I don't think he may love it more than we want to see it, but there's always something interesting about it. But I can see him playing in the sandbox of genre for a while, but I know that he thinks in the feature film space. I just don't know if he could certainly portion something out in terms of serialized entertainment, because, Refn did that with Too Old to Die Young. And as much as he did it his own way, where he was almost like creating a feature a week for 7 or 8 weeks, whatever it was, 10 weeks. I think Tarantino is going to continue to give us features because that is the shape in which he sees the world.
Holy cow. We just got a massive donation from Stephen Parker. Thank you so much. That's a huge, generous gift. He says, serious question. How much of what you love is a Pantina thing? To me, it's very Warren Fu of 10 or 15 years ago with the Strokes, Mark Robson, etc. I'm starting to worry that this question might actually be above my pay grade. Scurry, do you want to take a crack at that first?
Yeah, well, I think in this case, because he's using music as a an analogy, I think Mark Ronson, not Robson, I think he means Ronson in this case, is a perfect example. Talk about a guy who thinks cinematically. Mark Ronson, by the way, is the dude who gave you Uptown Funk, all that Bruno Mars shit. He comes at you, and there's something like, I think Mark Ronson is eating all these neo soul influences from the 80s, and he's giving you something like Uptown. I mean, Uptown Funk was chemically designed in a lab to within a micromole to give you this image. It was designed to be as big and as profitable as it was back in the day when it came out. I guess it's 4 years old now or so. And it's the song that sounds like Oops Upside Your Head, and it's the song that sounds like Morris Day and the Time. It's got this great old school sound. The Bird, oh wee, oh, right? All that stuff. And so, and the Strokes were before that. The Strokes were like 12 years ago, and they were trying to bring back the era of the New York Dolls and the sort of New York punk.
I don't listen to the Strokes a ton, but anything, is it Regina King that they've recorded a few songs with, or that Julian Casablancas has recorded with a few times? What is her name? But they've got a couple songs that I've got on my iPad that, and which of course is not within reach. God damn it! But I've got like 4 or 5 tracks where he goes into such a haunting, dark and beautiful place, like that song that was used in the trailer for the Sofia Coppola film. Is it Somewhere? The one about Los Angeles, like 2010 or 2011. Yeah. But the song that's used in that, where it's just him singing and kind of playing a few chords on the piano. It was bone-chilling stuff, and so that's the stuff by the Strokes that I lean more toward, as opposed to like the big songs that they kind of came roaring out of the gate with in the early 2000s. Yeah,
I think the question Steven's talking about is the idea that you're almost transplanting wholesale the soul of the thing. In this is almost like that. This is what splits the hair between is it nostalgia? Is it I recognize this. My podcast partner Noah says it used to be I like this, and now the major commercial thing is I recognize this. I know what this was because I've heard it before. And I think that the idea between with Mark Ronson and all his Bruno Mars stuff is that he's so good at chopping up, putting in a blender. There's a microorganism called the planaria where you get it to go through a maze, you chop it up, feed it to another planarian. That planarian also knows how to go through the maze because it ate the memories of the old one.
Yeah, that's
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
That makes my brain explode when I hear that stuff.
and there's something about that where the major media landscape of what we're dealing with, it's so big that to get even a big piece of it, you need to silo something in terms of what we already remember. And that's a son of a bitch. That's the thing to do, which is why, I'm not trying to be canny about this, but the idea of like finding Carpenter Brut or finding Seth Ickerman, these people who play in the sandbox, but they're not just selling you back the thing that you like. I think they're building on it. And I mentioned Panos Cosmatos at the top of this. I think that Mandy was a great example of this, where Mandy looks sideways like a lot of the shit you've seen, but it's like, tell me, I'll be fucked if it's not its own thing. And Black Rainbow was the same thing. The two dudes who did Let the Corpses Tan in their first movie, Amer. They were incredible. They're Frenchmen.
Yeah, Victor Rodriguez brought that up as well on Twitter the other day. But also, speaking of Twitter, quick shout out to a few of our friends on Twitter. We got Alexandra from Film and Vinyl in the house. And we've got the legendary Ultra Kill Blast, who runs by, I think I've said it before, but I think it's my favorite Twitter profile in terms of the stuff that he covers. Interesting question here. Are you guys familiar with the work of the French director Bertrand Mandico, and especially his sole feature film, The Wild Boys? I feel like especially Bill might be a fan. Is he correct? Is Bill a fan?
I've never heard of it, but I mean, there's a lot of things I haven't heard about. But Lennart, thank you. No, Bertrand Mandico. No, I can't say I've ever heard about it. Wild Boys. I know the Duran Duran song, but not the movie.
Oh, and then Steve he elaborated upon his question. He said, I mean, the look of the film, the patina, it's very Warren Fu. Once again, as I mentioned before, beyond my pay grade, I'm looking up Warren Fu right now. I see he's a visual effects art director, and warrenfu.com. Oh, wow. I just found a picture of an astonishingly hot girl, all in red.
You won James over.
Yeah. I might have to do the deep dive on his site, but yeah, I'm at Warren Fu. It's just warrenfu.com, and he's got videos, and he's got commercials, and he's got images. But from what little I've seen thus far, this one called Zed plus Katy Perry. Yeah, I can definitely see that there's some overlap in between their two universes, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So before we start getting toward the tail end of this episode, I do want to give a shout out to specific music videos featuring the music of Carpenter Brut, because this is a Carpenter Brut love fest. There's so many good ones to dive into, but you might be the world's foremost fan of Murder Rock, which was featured in one of his videos for Les Perv, hence your name. So give us the Bill Scurry rundown on your favorite music videos that feature the music of Carpenter Brut.
Okay, so once you guys click this off, go to Vimeo, search for Carpenter Brut. Mostly turn back 2 channels worth of results. It's gonna come back the Carpenter Brut home channel, which has a lot of ancillary Kickstarter material. You're gonna get this guy Silver Strain. Don't know who he is. I think he's an American. He's a cutter. He's a fucking visual fantabulist. So this guy was given the remit to make music videos for every track on the Leather Teeth album. He did not film new material. What he did was he did this sample dive, like he was DJ Shadow, like he was Plug Christ. Was that the guy's name? No, Plug or Wagon Christ. This Welsh guy named Luke Vibert. These guys who work synthetically with all little bits and pieces of art that's come before, but in a beautiful, fresh way. So there are videos from Silver Strain. Again, mark my words. For all the songs, there was La Perv, there was Maniac, which is the live song. There was Hairspray Hurricane, Cheerleader Effect, etc., Monday Hunt. So these things use the bits and pieces of a lot of 80s genre filmmaking, low budget garbage that came out in like 85, 86, disposable crap that was made all over the place. And this guy cuts it up and he built his own story that goes across each music video.
Especially like a Cheerleader Effect. I was like, this looks like the best movie ever, and then I looked at the list, and it's like 100,000 movies. Like it's Shock 'Em Dead from '91, Rock Hard from '85, Return to Horror High from '87, Killer Workout, Intruder, Slaughter High, Splatter University, Terror Vision, and Zipper Face. I was like, okay, so he's just but he makes it feel like one sequential narrative.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you could do this shit, and I guarantee you, I have not seen the movies. I've seen a few of them, but I've not seen the movies.
I looked up a few clips on Mr. Skin just because that's how I roll.
Yeah, it's nudity intensive. It's cheerleader intensive. It's completely sleazy, and that's the thing.
It's rated P for pervasive panty shots.
The sleazier and the more exploitative it is, the guy's working with an art form, and the music lends itself to it. This is the thing. It's like the synthesis of the album Leather Teeth, which was designed by Carpenter Brut without a story in mind, but it was supposed to conjure the idea of an 80s slasher, and also a Motley Crue type band, these long hairs, this sort of Iron Maiden circa 83. And this guy Silver Strain just came in and nailed the vision, the rest of it. And this mixture. Yeah, so James mentioned Murder Rock. So yeah, La Perv, which came out before that, 2013, off their first set of albums, trilogy, they cut up Murder Rock, Death Dance, Lucio Fulci's thing, which I've seen it. The movie's not great. I mean, it's beautiful. It stars one of the Olga Karlatos, who's my Greek European crush of all time. She's actually a lawyer in Bermuda now, if you know that. That's kind of what she's retired and she's a fucking lawyer now. Anyway, but this movie chops up the pieces of Murder Rock into something that's almost coherent and beautiful. Whatever it is that Fulci made, it excels in a music video.
Yeah, well, I showed my lady friend that video the other night, and she loved it. And then I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to give you a taste of the Keith Emerson score that was originally used. And I played her the theme song from the opening credits. She was like, is this a joke? Like, are they making it bad on purpose? I was like, well, that's the big debate. Is it brilliant or is it horrendous? Nobody really knows. But she was like, it sounds like they're trying to like deliberately be like do like atonality or whatever. But now that I've seen Murder Rock with the Carpenter Brut music, it's gonna be very hard for me to go back to the Keith Emerson.
I love the Keith Emerson. I bought the soundtrack. I'm a huge ELP fan. And Emerson did the soundtrack to Inferno for Argento. So he's got his bona fides.
He's got his chops. Yeah,
he's got his chops. He knows what he's talking about. He's done plenty of. And he's also done some anime too. He did in the anime live stream he did this Genma Taizen Armageddon movie too, which is also a great fucking soundtrack. So this guy knows genre, but that's besides the point because the images, you know, it's like I love Fulci. You won't get a bigger Fulci fan than me. And I also think that if you chop it up and get rid of the weak spots, Fulci just becomes one of the top 3 filmmakers.
Fulci, when he's good, he's tough to beat. But
Yeah.
I won't deny that even in his best movies, you'll have like a 10-minute stretch where like, has anything happened in 10 minutes? Like, what the fuck's going on here? And then suddenly it'll kick back in. So yeah, making highlight videos from Fulci is like this perfect opportunity. But man, like we were talking about this before we started recording. Sometimes I feel like, and this is coming from somebody who does a podcast about film history, but I feel like sometimes with like our obsession with film history, we can get so preoccupied with the past that we can overlook the present perhaps, or we kind of will forget that some of the things that we love, they were contemporary at one point too, but this guy finds a way to make film history live and breathe again in a really inviting way where I feel like if you could sit down with your high school kids who've never watched a movie from the 80s in their life, you know, give them some caffeine or whatever their chemical, or maybe they're college students, whatever they're into, and turn them loose on these. And what I think it would do, it would excite a curiosity. Like, oh my God, like this video from Maniac made me want to run through walls. What were those images that they were intercutting the concert with? And I feel like it's the best invitation to perhaps for some kids who see it to want to start that journey going through checking out some of these crazy old movies.
If you were, let's say this is a universe where you can leave your house and go to a public place. If you could go to the Met right now, to the Temple of Dender, to the Egyptian wing of the Metropolitan Museum, or you could go to the Cooper Hewitt, one of those fucking fantastic museums in New York. The whole point is to get you excited about seeing Jasper Johns' American Flag or Jackson Pollock's American Rhythm. You know, like you have to look at the stuff in context. I mean, when I went through Rome, it was the same. We looked at every Caravaggio and every Bernini that there was. And the whole point of it was, we need to give this context for ourselves. It's beautiful, but I also want to make my own story out of it. Also, I want them to tell me, why should I give a shit about Ingres, you know, about any of these artists along the way, pre-Raphaelite paintings, Donatello, et cetera, et cetera. And in a way, it may be cruder and it may be a little bit more, you know, frivolous, but the idea is like there's a pop museum thing going on, where it's giving you the reason why you should care. It's museum inscriptions on a wall saying what the meaning of this painting is. And I love shit like that. It's like, make it important to me. It's so much easier to do with bits and pieces of slasher horror from 87 than it might be to do with Dominique Ingres. But I mean, it's still the same thing. You're looking at art and someone's making you excited about it. That's the best docent. The guy.
Yeah, like I have no idea who Takashi Ishii is, but a video that I saw right before we started recording is this Carpenter Brut video for Obituary, and it's just filled with clips from the career. I don't even know if Takashi Ishii is an actor or a filmmaker.
Oh, he's a director, filmmaker. Yeah.
But I was like, these are some of the most beautiful images I've ever seen. But granted, it's nudity and gore, and pretty much all of these. Like there's not a lot of, I don't know, like wholesome entertainment in any of this, but I make no apologies at all. And I give no ground when it comes to like people wagging their finger in disapproval at enjoying this stuff. And that's one of the things that was so refreshing when I started watching these videos, is that somebody is like, not only are they not tapping the brakes, they're mashing down on the accelerator, like all the gore, all the nudity you've ever wanted, and all the best music and like beautiful like women you could ever possibly think of. We're just going to stir them all together, and it's just the deep dive. And you can just go, you can binge these videos for like an hour and not come up for air and just have the time of your life.
I was taking notes. Yeah, you know, the thing is, when I was a kid, when I was like 11, 12 years old, and kids were trying to play Black Christmas and shit at sleepovers, and I was tentative about it. And I just thought, this is freaking me out. This is something I don't need to see. I don't need to see people beheaded, because it seemed like the violence was so real. So I was like sleaze. I was exploitation of verse at a young age. And it's like only as I get older where I'm exactly the same thing. Slam that gas pedal. It's not just like give you exploitation and sleaze and murder and violence and breast and nudity and stuff. It's giving you only that. It is the power of those images synthesized into something. It's like it is so designed for me, because it is capitalizing on all that shit that I was afraid of as a young kid, that was intimidating, that was fearsome, that seemed like it was verboten. that it took me so long to finally get a hunger for it, taste for it. But it's like now, if you eat pepper sauce over and over again, like Sky Wingfield, like you need to just eat more of it because you just become this inhuman pepper monster who's built up such a tolerance to it.
Well, also, it's like when you watch these videos, like if you watch these original movies, you have to put up with plot and structure and things like that to get to these juicy moments. He's like, you know what?
Yeah,
we're just going to give you nothing but 3 or 4 minutes of only juicy moments.
Good parts, good parts, good parts, good parts.
It's like, we're just going to remove anything and everything that might possibly distract you from the main event. So yeah, I guess in closing, for me, it was just so exciting to discover this reservoir, this library content that I was not even remotely aware it was available until a couple of days ago. And I feel like someone who runs a YouTube channel and a podcast, I'm always excited when I discover fresh terrain, whether it's like the ninja movies we just talked about, Tony Stella from the 60s.
That was a great episode.
The case might
great
be.
Fucking episode, yeah.
I need new frontiers to explore to remain excited. And when I fell into the world of Carpenter Brut, suddenly I found myself just as a rabid, media-hungry fan, just having the time of my life again. So I'm all in. I can't say enough positive things. And the moment Carpenter Brut wants to go on tour again in America, I know he did some big tour like in 2016. Hell, I will fly anywhere in the world once this fucking pandemic is over and see that guy in concert. Because if a concert by him is like that video for Maniac, then I don't know if I would ever want it to end.
Yeah, toplessness and thumping visuals and a French guy speaking transliterated lyrics. Yeah, there's something to that. I think we're at this point now where, again, I could talk about Silver Strain and how great it was to watch all those videos. But at the same time, because we are pulling apart, I'm listening to so many great people who I respect intellectually recontextualize film on your podcast, on this YouTube channel, in other venues where they talk about things and let me know, here's the bits and pieces, here's the vocabulary, here's all these things that in the moment might have missed us, but you're going to look at the amino acids, the building blocks of these things and what makes them so great. And I'm at such a position now as an elderly 44-year-old man to appreciate it more than ever. And this is like a gateway drug for so many of those things. And I hope that I could find somebody who will continue this. Again, chop up all this sleaze, this exploitation, all this great shit that people have just pissed on from the 80s, because as we've seen, there is something there. There's so much art. We've reclaimed Michele Soavi and Fulci, and we've given them this exalted position. But it's like there are all these Frank Hanenlotters of the world, the guys who made really, really gross visuals, disgusting things that were banned. And I'm like, I want to see the evangelists of that stuff. And if you chop it up, give it to me wholesale, whatever, I'm ready for it, because I think we're all ready for it.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm just going to answer a few remaining questions before we wrap up. Andre Villafranca says, Halloween needs to start adapting all of H.P. Lovecraft's stories and expand upon them and that universe. We're all thirsty for cosmic horror. Richard Stanley has started it. I mean, he did Color Out of Space, and he's working on Dunwich Horror. And he said there is a third Lovecraft film beyond that, whether that's At the Mountains of Madness or Call of Cthulhu. But he says it's he says it'll be obvious, but it's one of the big ones. But I think once Stanley is finished with that trilogy, we will have that great Lovecraftian shared universe. So I'm rooting for him all the way to make that a success. Anything else in here? See a lot of people debating Tarantino Westerns.
and Tony, Sky brought up his immunity to coronavirus because of pepper sauce, which it's two things I defer to Sky. One is the craft of Welsh and English beer and his affinity for hot pepper sauce, among other things. Yes.
Hey, Matthias saying, just fired a Vimeo, going to check out some videos after we're done here. Yeah. You won't come up for air for a good long while. Yeah. Paul, the bearded one down, he says Fulci is absolutely mega. I'd be inclined to agree. I think that's everything. Bob Amara, great stuff, guys. Love the energy. More. Well, I've got a live stream plan for the immediate future with Victor Rodriguez. I'll start promoting that in the near future, but it's going to be all about his favorite adaptations across different forms of media of the Odyssey. So it'll be a bit of the old, which 2,700-year-old story, and a bit of the new. So yeah, definitely want to try to do live streams on a more consistent basis. But Mr. Scurry,
people should check out that episode you did with Amira recently about Thompson and Bukowski and Burroughs, because that was like literally beyond belief. I haven't read any of that shit, but it was just a real fucking
very cool. Well, where can people find you online if they want to hear more about your points of view on any of the topics that we discussed today?
If you dare, at William Scurry on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Bill Scurry, whatever. It's my dad. My estranged dad's out there too, but I'm pretty much.
What your YouTube channel.
youtube.com/AM Caesar. You'll see the first season of American Caesar Salad. I put out a video with Kevin Marr a couple of weeks ago. We did Dr. Zayas was right. Kevin has his own thing going on. I cut that for him and friend of the show, Nick Nadell. I had fun, put like a 4-minute video about villains in movies who happen to be correct. So that's out there too on YouTube. Dr. Zayas was right. But stay tuned because I'm at my Brad Dourif episode 3 of 10 for American Caesar Salad, and I think you guys hopefully will enjoy that as well.
Very cool. One last question from Andre says, how's that Berserk manga read through? I'd love a review and hope you're loving it. I am loving it intensely. I think I'm on book 18. I need to buy some more, but I took a break because I started buying like Akira and Ghost. I started buying some other manga. And anyway, I'm just determined. I neglected manga for so many decades that I'm determined to play some catch up on at least some of the major ones. So, but once again, when I was talking about how Jodorowsky writes comics for crazy freaks like myself who are just tired of like, kind of vanilla comics, well, manga provides all the extreme content that I want. So I think I've got a lot of catching up to do. Steven Simpson, damn, I've missed it, just got in. Yeah, Steven, you're coming at the very end of this live stream, but shout out to Pop Culture Gamers. And we've been talking about possibly doing a live stream of a couple different topics. We're thinking maybe doing Hammer horror at one point, which could be fun, but I'm open to record about it on any topic with Steven anytime. But we can't thank you enough for listening. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit that notification bell. YouTube does this thing where if people don't watch some of your videos, they just stop recommending them, even if you're subscribed. So really, if you want to support a channel, the best way is to hit that notification bell so that you can continue to get continue actually to see the things that I'm posting. You can always find me on Twitter at Colbrax, but definitely hunt down Blood Machines, definitely hunt down these music videos, and definitely hunt down Bill Scurry's content. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it.
This guy right here.
Indeed. Well, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Thanks again for the donation. I really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards. Boom.